Hello everyone, this is Jim Ogrozinski with your week 11 lecture video. So first I want to begin with how to organize the proposal essay. So much like I provided an organizational outline for the summary essay, the essay 2, I'm doing the exact same thing here for the proposal essay 3. So I'll give you two pathways. Once again, the first is the anecdotal, drawing your own experiences in higher education that may provide some context for your problem. Okay, anecdotal, a story, introduction, short, straight to the point, or background, provide some basic information about the problem that you are talking about, whether it's some statistics. Boy, I'm having a hard time with that word tonight. Situations, you have to provide some background so the reader becomes familiar. So there's two pathways. The anecdote is a story, just use it as your introduction. And at the end of whatever introduction you use, anecdote or background, you have to have a guiding point or a thesis. What is the main point of the draft? A thesis can be as simple as stating the problem and providing an overview of your solutions, okay? So after you get through the opening and your thesis statement, the main section of the essay is broken up into basic two parts. You're going to break it up into many paragraphs. Remember, one topic a paragraph, but your first section is going to be stating and dramatizing the problem. Here's where you establish the seriousness and the consequentiality of the problem. In this part of the essay, you should show me your evidence for support, your source material, about the seriousness of the problem. Data from your sources and examples from real life experiences should drive the show me. So let me touch on personal experiences as academic evidence. You can use your personal experience as evidence to support the problem. It should be limited. It should not be restating if you use the story in your introduction. It should be some experience that's different from that. But an experience should be used like you would use source material. So you would build that quote hamburger around your experience. There would be a lead in, your personal experience. The transitional phrase that should be used would be, for example. And then you would go on to provide the experience and then analyze or comment on that experience like you would quote or source information, right? That's the way it should be used. After you present the seriousness and consequentiality of the problem, then you have to move to solutions. So here's where you inform the reader of the solutions to the problem you've laid out. Some of the solutions could be simple, some more complicated. Provide evidence to back up your solutions. Even if you talk about time management or procrastination, if you've come up with solutions, I have found that putting away my phone helps me with time management to avoid procrastination. But you have to be able to come up with some real life examples there, right? Same thing. For example, here's where you demonstrate the possible solution by finding others that have solved the problem. You can do that through research, right? And then some of your source material, data from your sources or real life examples provide the evidence. Then you move into the conclusion. You wrap up with the reasoning of why your solution would benefit people and or society. So in other words, I always ask the question like, what does this matter to me? Why is it important for this problem to be solved? So I'd like to get to the example essays and talk about those for a minute. Let me get to the appendix here. Scroll on down to page 68 is where the first proposal argument begins. Yeah, so the very first one, the bachelor problem. Here is where the student utilizes the anecdote, a story about going to Moraine Valley Community College, how much this student loves Moraine Valley, and he can't see why community colleges can't afford a bachelor's program that you can get a bachelor's degree while staying at the community college. A lot of people like their community college. Moraine is not like COD, where COD has the 3+1 programs there with about 12 different institutions, so you can stay at COD and earn a bachelor's degree. Not a lot of community colleges in the state offer that pathway. Okay, so you want to be aware of that. Here you have also a guiding point or a thesis statement at the end of the first paragraph of your introduction. Remember, the three most important sentences in any essay is the first sentence, the last sentence of the first paragraph, typically saved for the thesis statement, and the very last sentence of the essay, because that is what you leave the reader to take away from your writing, right? The very last, you want to leave an impression there. You should spend time on those three sentences. If you have a first sentence that is kind of wonky in construction, it doesn't read well, or it's real short, lacks impact, you can guarantee that I will more than likely comment on it. So that's the introduction, and as you scroll through, one item I'd like to point out is how this writer uses sources. So we have here is a lead into the source. The Institute for Higher Education Policy reported on the World Socialist website by Kathleen Martin. 95% of American colleges are too expensive for the majority of low-income students. Here we have all three principles of citation. So we have the lead into the source and introducing the basic author here. We have the quote. And at the end of the quote, we have a parenthetical with the author's last name. So that we have the principle 1, principle 2. Now, if we scroll to the works cited page, there we go. We find Kathleen Martin here in the works cited page. So I have an in-text citation. I have a works cited citation in there. So I've accomplished there the cross-referencing is what I've been able to verify. So as you work through this particular draft, you will see the back and forth. Some of the quote hamburgers could be a little bit more well developed, but one thing you have to be aware of is how sources are used. In an interview for the U.S. News and World Report, Brianna Boynton with Matt Brousseau, Director for Information Technology for Hiring and Recruitment firm, explains there will be people who look at your lack of a bachelor's as a shortcoming. So we have some conversation before in the lead-in, little bit of conversation after. I'd like to see a little bit more there. But as you work through your rhetorical analysis, please be aware of how both student authors worked with their sources leading in. Certainly here in this particular instance, more conversation after the source would be beneficial to balance out the quote hamburger that is described in chapter 1 in the textbook. Same thing, we have some good breakdown here. So just want to point out the student here talks a lot about and supports the seriousness of the problem. There is one solution that I don't often see. So here's the rhetorical shift, moving from problem to solution. Clear-cut problem solution format, running through and establishing the solution there, and eventually ending up into the conclusion. Likewise, if you happen, please take a look at the works cited page here. All sources are organized alphabetically using last name, first name of authors. If you do not have an author, then you have to use the title of the article as the guide for where it would fit in the alphabetical order. So for here, it would be an I or a W or an M if there were no authors. But if you have authors, everything is Himalayas, author page, author page. So these sources are organized alphabetically, and they do have a hanging indent. Every source has to have a hanging indent. Really simple. You just highlight your text, click on, there's no format here. No, darn it. No format there, so we're just going to have to work that through. I can show you that in the screencast video. But also here, moving on to the next example. Next example here is for coping with stress and anxiety. The student opens up with some background about mental health and stress, throws in a little personal experience to get the conversation going. Excellent use of sources here. Tim Gorel is the first source, endpoint, introducing, right? And then we'll look at the works cited page to see the cross-reference. Goes on to paraphrase Gorel and the information in that particular article. You see all of it. Spencer is the next author that's used, right? With the, here we go, with the quote here. So weaved into the paragraph, we have a good quote hamburger here. And this particular student made a direct shift to quickly talked about the problem and then went right to solutions. And there's an extensive conversation about the solutions here. So this one leans in the opposite direction. One has a lot of time spent on the problem, a solution. This particular example had a little time spent on establishing the seriousness of the problem and right to several solutions, and then makes that rhetorical shift to the solution right here, much like the first example, and then works through to the conclusion. Works cited page is much the same. Here you have perfect alphabetical order and hanging indents for the works cited page. All right. So I hope this helps you in your rhetorical analysis for discussion board 15. Also with helping you structure your draft for drafting week next week. I believe our first draft and peer report is due Tuesday. All right. That being said, good luck and stay safe.